Greetings to everyone. Welcome back to my educational channel on biology. Teacher Janet here. In this video, we're going to discuss an interesting and also important topic called variation. So variation means the differences in characteristics between organisms of the same species. For example, this is the tulip plant. We can see that it shows variation from the aspect of flower color, right? So there are yellow tulips, red tulips, pink tulips, white tulips, and even purple tulips. Right, so we're going to discuss the definition of variation and also the importance or necessity of variation to an organism's survival. So we're going to discuss an interesting story about a moth that happened in the 18th century in England and how variation caused its survival. Our learning standards are as follows. Types of variation. First, we must know the meaning of variation and then justify the necessity of variation or importance of variation for the survival of the species. So our first learning standard and question here is explain the meaning of variation. So variation is defined as the differences in characteristics or traits between organisms of the same species or of the same population. So if they are from the same population, they are of the same species, all right? So examples are, for example here, variation in humans. So when we discuss variation, we are comparing organisms of the same species, right? So humans, their scientific name is Homo sapiens. And here we can see a group of children that have different skin color and different hair color, right? And also they show differences in the color of their eyes too. Then the type of hair is also different. Some have curly hair, some have straight hair. And even their blood groups may show differences, right? So variation refers to differences in the physical traits and characteristics of phenotypes caused by differences in structure. For example, differences in structure can be differences in height. Some are tall, some medium height, some are shorter, and then in weight too. And differences in physiology can refer to differences in eye color. So the eye color is determined by the color of the iris, which is the round part of the eye, right? And then skin color. And for biochemistry, maybe you can give the example of blood type, because blood group is determined by the presence of specific antigens in the blood. For example, blood group A people have antigen A, blood group B people have antigen B, okay, and so forth. Now, physiology and biochemistry are actually related, okay? Biochemistry means at the molecular level, okay? What's the difference at the molecular level? And physiology refers to the functions of the body. Now, so our examples of variation are like what you said just now, okay, differences in height, weight, blood group, hair color, eye color, ability to roll the tongue, and for plants, differences in the height of plants of the same species and differences in flower color. Okay, here we see tomatoes of the same species but different varieties, right? So we have the tomatoes that differ in sizes, in their structure also, and also in the colors, in their colors. Now, use of variation. Variation enables us to identify individuals within a population. For example, we can identify the children here based on their different appearance, which is caused by variation from many aspects. To understand the importance of variation, let's discuss the story of Biston betullaria, the peppered moth. So this is a true story, kisah benar. Now, there are two variants or colors of the peppered moth called Biston betullaria, which are the light gray colored moth and the dark colored moth or melanic moth. So for this species of moth, there are two different types, right? One has a light gray set of wings and also body, right? So this is the more common type. Originally, this is the more common type of moth that is found in England before the Industrial Revolution, okay, in England or UK. The other variant or the other type of moth has dark colored wings. Why is it dark colored? Because this moth had a mutated gene, a gene that already underwent abnormal changes. So it will have more melanin on the wings and the body parts, okay? So the gene is for more melanin, which is a black pigment, on the body, so it will produce darker colored wings and body, almost like black color. So it's called the melanic moth because it has a lot of melanin in its body. Okay. So before the Industrial Revolution in UK, before 1760, it was the environment was unpolluted. It was very clean, no air pollution, and there were uh, the surfaces of the buildings and the trees were all light colored, right? That's before the Industrial Revolution. But the environment changed. Okay, starting from 1760 onwards, the Industrial Revolution occurred, whereby more and more factories were built, more machines were used, and coal was used, burnt to get energy. So the chimneys start to produce or allow a lot of black smoke to come out. The smoke contained the soot, which is black in color. Okay, carbon particles that are black in color. So it polluted the environment and caused the surfaces of the buildings and the trees, including the tree trunks, to become darker colored. Okay, so did Biston betullaria, this moth, survive the change in the environment? And what was the reason for it? Okay, let's find out more. Let's discuss the situation before the Industrial Revolution and then during the Industrial Revolution, or after the Industrial Revolution started. So before the Industrial Revolution, the environment was unpolluted and the trees were light colored because there were no carbon particles on it, or less carbon particles. And then there was the growth of lichen, which is also light colored, light green, for example. So lichen is a combination of algae and fungus growing together, right? So the lichen was light colored and it grew on the tree, so it made the tree light colored. So in this situation, which variant of the moth was better off? Which one will survive better? Yes, it's the light colored moth. Why? Because the light colored moth was well camouflaged, meaning it could blend in with the surroundings, as it had the ability to match itself with the background. Okay, it's almost the same color. So it blends in with the surroundings, and then it is not easily seen by the predators like the birds and lizards and so forth. So they were not eaten so much by the predators because they were well hidden away, they were not easily seen. So they reproduce and then pass off this trait or the genes for light gray body parts to their offspring. Okay, so whereas on the other hand, the dark colored moths show greater contrast to the light colored tree. So they were more obvious and more easily seen by the predators and eaten by the predators. So their population size decreased, right? Or there are very few of these dark moths surviving. So you can see here A in the graph of the population size of moths against time. At A, that means before the Industrial Revolution, the number of dark colored moths were less, much less than those of the light colored moths. Okay, so the light colored moths were the common type of moths before the Industrial Revolution. But the environment changed. Okay, so from 1760s onwards, the environment was filled with polluted air and soot from the factories that were built, right? So the tree bark became darker color because there were carbon deposits on it. Apart from that, the pale colored lichen also died due to air pollution. Okay, so the trees became dark colored. Now, in this situation, which moth was better camouflaged? Yes, it is the dark colored moth. Okay, it was well camouflaged. It had the ability now to blend in with the dark surroundings, and it can match the dark background, so it is not easily seen by the predators. Okay, it will remain hidden from the predators, although it's there. Whereas the light colored moth now became more obvious, and because of the greater contrast between its body, between its wings, and the dark tree bark. Okay, so the dark colored moth was better camouflaged. They were not eaten by predators. They reproduced and passed these genes on, the gene for darker wings and body, to their offspring. Okay, so the population increased gradually and became more. The population of the dark-colored moths became more than that of the light-colored moths. The light-colored moths that showed greater contrast to the tree bark were more obvious and more easily seen by the predators, and they were eaten, so their population size decreased. So here are the notes for what we discussed just now, and this is the question that can be asked in the exam. Discuss how variation helped in the survival of the moth Biston betuliera. So the answer is in the form of a table, so that's easy for you to compare before the Industrial Revolution and during or after the Industrial Revolution started. But in the exam, please write in paragraphs. You can write three paragraphs to replace the three sections here, and also for after the Industrial Revolution, another 3 paragraphs. Okay, so before the Industrial Revolution, the environment was unpolluted. The trees were light-colored due to the growth of lichens that are light-colored and the absence of air pollution. So in this situation, the light-colored moths were better camouflaged, that the ability to blend into and match the background, so they were not easily seen by predators. That's important to note. They were not eaten, and they reproduced more than the dark-colored moths, so their population increased. Whereas the dark-colored moths were in greater contrast to the light-colored tree bark, they were more obvious and more easily seen by predators and eaten, so their population size decreased. But during the Industrial Revolution, the situation or environment changed. The environment became polluted by air pollution, and the trees were covered with dark soot, black soot, so they became darker. Also, the soot killed the light-colored lichen. So in this situation, the dark-colored moths now became better camouflaged than the light grey moths. They were not easily seen by the predators, and they were not eaten. So they reproduced more than the light grey moths, and their population now increased instead. Whereas the light grey moths were in greater contrast to the dark tree bark. They were more obvious and more easily seen by predators and eaten, so their population decreased, right? So over time, the dark-colored moths replaced the light grey colored moths. Okay, they became the more common type or variant of the moth Biston betuliera, right? Compared to the light grey colored moths. So here's the conclusion of the story. Variation in the color of the moth Biston betuliera helped the moth to adapt to the changing environment. When the trees and background became darker due to air pollution caused by soot from the factories, the darker colored moths were not easily seen by the predators because they had better camouflage and blend in. They matched the surroundings and blend into the surroundings, so they were not eaten. So through camouflage and through variation, the species Biston betuliera survived the change in the environment. Now let's look at this question. Justify the necessity or importance of variation for the survival of the species. So must mention the survival of the species. So here I've given you a very basic outline, which is very easy for you to use. Think of the word VENS. The acronym is called VENS, V-E-N-S-E. V for variation, E for environmental changes, and natural selection, as survival of the species, E evolution, in this sequence. So first, there is variation that exists among the organisms of the same species. There are differences in the characteristics. So this will help when the environment changed, because natural selection will occur whereby those organisms with the more beneficial characteristics will survive, and those with the less beneficial characteristics will die, right? So this will lead to the survival of the species, and over time, evolution can occur where there are gradual changes in the characteristics of the species. We'll take this moth as the example, okay? So the first importance of variation for the survival of the species is when the environment changes, variation enables the natural selection to occur in the natural environment, okay? So it enables the natural environment to select the beneficial characteristics or genes of the species through the survival of the fittest or best adapted organism, like the dark-colored moth of Biston betuliera, and to remove the non-suitable characteristics or genes, because the less well-adapted individuals will die. That is, the light grey colored moth will die because it's eaten by predators. Okay, so when the environment changed, that means, for example, when air pollution occurred and the tree trunks became darker in color due to the deposits of soot, okay, then variation will enable the natural environment to select the more beneficial characteristics or genes. That is the characteristic of having the darker wings and body, right? It is beneficial because it helps the moth to match its surroundings through camouflage, and then it's not easily seen by predators, it's not eaten by the predators, so it's able to survive. It's a survival of the best adapted organism here, and it will reproduce, and more quickly it will produce more offspring with the same beneficial characteristics that are passed on from generation to generation. Okay, so the dark colored wings and body parts is caused by a gene, right, that determines that there's more melanin in the wings and the body parts. Okay, more melanin that makes the moth darker in color. Now, at the same time, variation enables the natural environment to remove the non-suitable characteristics or genes because the less well-adapted individuals die. So the light gray colored moth is in greater contrast to its background. So it's easily seen by predators and it's eaten. Then it died. So when it died, the non-suitable characteristic of a light gray body and wings is removed, right? Because this moth will die and it's not able to reproduce and pass on these genes to the offspring. Now next, thus variation enables the adaptation and survival of the whole species, okay, of that species when the environment changes. So notice we have talked about variation, environmental change, and then natural selection occurred. So now we talk about survival of the species, okay, due to the natural selection process. So variation ensures adaptation, meaning the ability of the organism to suit itself to the changing environment, right, and survive. So it leads to the survival of the species because this dark colored moth managed to survive, right? So it led to the survival of the species Piston batuleria when the environment changed. And lastly, variation allows crossbreeding among species, especially those species that are closely related. There may be crossbreeding between them to form new species over time. Now let's look at this important question. What is natural selection? And explain the role of variation in natural selection. So this word natural selection is a new term, okay, in our syllabus. So we must know how to define it, okay, and then explain the role of variation. So firstly, natural selection is a natural process or force that selects or chooses the beneficial genes through the survival of individuals that are well adapted to changes in the environment, and it removes the non-beneficial genes from the environment through the death of the less well-adapted individuals. As we mentioned just now, the dark-colored moth, it has the beneficial genes or characteristics. Okay, the gene is a mutant gene or a gene that's undergone abnormal changes. And this gene helps the moth to have more melanin on the wings. Okay, the melanin is the dark pigment. So that it has more melanin on the wings and the body parts, making it look darker so that it's able to match or blend in to the background and it's not easily seen by predators, right? So it will survive. So this moth survived and then reproduced and passed on the genes to its offspring. Okay, it's the more well-adapted moth. At the same time, the non-beneficial genes are removed from the environment in that the light gray colored moth, which has the gene for light gray wings and body parts, will be easily seen by the predators, so it will die. It's the less well-adapted individual. So when it's eaten by the predators, it dies and is not able to reproduce and pass on these non-beneficial genes for light gray wings to its offspring. Okay, so it's removed. It is removed, its genes are also removed. So let's go on to the next part. Explain the role of variation in natural selection. Here again, we use the acronym VANS. Talk about variation, and then when the environment, talk about variation existing in the species, and then when the environment changes, natural selection occurred where the beneficial genes and the individuals that are better adapted, well adapted to the changing environment will survive. Okay, so this will lead to the survival of the species, and then over time, evolution will occur. Gradual changes will occur to the species. Okay, so a species that shows variation in its phenotypes or observable characteristics of its individuals, like the color of the wings here, will be able to adapt when the environment changes. Okay, for example, when air pollution occurred and the environment became darker. As the well-adapted individuals continue to live and breed while the others die, the non-well-adapted individuals will die. Thus, variation leads to natural selection of beneficial genes. The beneficial genes will be selected over the non-beneficial genes. Okay, the darker colored moth will survive and the light gray colored moth will not survive, right? So this enables the survival of the species, okay, through the well-adapted individuals. So when the darker colored moth survived, means the Biston Betularia species survived. And thus variation forms the basis of natural selection and evolution, where evolution means the process by which the physical characteristics of a species change gradually over time, could be many, many, many years due to natural selection and mutation. Okay, so here we are talking about the change in the characteristic of wing color, all right, whereby the moth with the darker wings and body parts will replace the moth that are light green color. So this darker colored moth will be the more common moth already, right, later on, compared to the light gray colored moth. Right, that's all for this lesson. Thanks for viewing, and please do share, like, and subscribe to my channel. So goodbye for now.